Hi, I'm Hannah, and this is Lisa, and today we are going to be talking about the tender eyes of Leah.
Yes, and that is a topic that we can talk about for hours. We're going to keep it short, try to keep it short. All right, and if it could be that it's like so much, we could maybe discuss these two sisters again in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But to begin, I want to read Genesis 29, and 16 through 18, and it says, "Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak," it says in the Complete Jewish Bible, but a lot of them say that her eyes were tender.
Mm-hmm.
But Rachel was good looking, beautiful, with beautiful features. And Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you 7 years in exchange for Rachel, your younger daughter." So, what does it mean when it says that Leah's eyes were tender? A lot of people, they will say, well, she had something wrong with her eyes. That weak eye, she has a wandering eye.
Yeah, or maybe that it meant that she wasn't very beautiful or very pretty or whatever.
Right. But as you know, as we've learned by studying this out, that's not what that means at all. But this is talking about an inward quality of Leah versus the inward qualities of Rachel.
Right.
And so to explain this, I want to go back to the ancient culture and their understanding of the innermost being of a person. And so I want to begin by reading Psalm 73 here, and I'll try to pull it up on my phone, so I usually can do that faster. Psalm 73 and 21 says this, and I'm not going to use that version because it does not bring it out. It says, "Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my kidneys."
Oh, wow.
Okay, pricked in my kidneys. So, you know, I used to read that as I was a kid, and I was thinking, my kidneys? I was pricked in my kidneys. What does that mean?
Yeah.
All right, so now there's another one, and this one I'm going to use from the New Covenant, and I'm going to read from, and there are lots of these in the scripture, but I just chose these two to read. So 1 John 3:17 says this. It says, but whoever has this world's goods and seeth his brother in need and shuts up his bowels from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? So shuts up his bowels.
Oh,
and
wow.
so again, I'm thinking, my bowels? Shuts up my bowels. But this was talking about the inner being of a person, the innermost being.
So is it like what we say is the heart today?
Yes. So by the time we get to the newer covenant, instead of saying kidneys or bowels, it became more heart.
Okay.
Which is more what we use today. I love you with all my heart.
Right.
So could you imagine if your boyfriend said, "Baby, you make my liver quiver," or "You move my bowels," and I would be like, huh?
Yeah, we'd be marking that one off the list.
Yeah. But this was the innermost being to them.
Yes.
And then now, of course, we say heart.
Mm-hmm.
But so when you think of Leah, that's kind of like her eyes, that she was tender-eyed. She, on the inside, she had a heart that was towards God that Rachel did not have.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I had heard that one of the explanations for her eyes was because as the older sister, those sitting in the town square or whatever would have this little thing going that said Esau was for Leah and Jacob was for Rachel. And I had read that the rabbi said that part of her tender eyes was that she was crying so much because just the thought of being wed to Esau because he was a sinful man. And so that would go back to your thing that says that she had a heart towards God. She didn't want to be yoked with somebody
like Esau.
Because
she knew that Esau did not go after God, but Jacob did.
Yes, okay.
And so, that's the reason that when Laban, he tricks Jacob and doesn't let him have Rachel after the 7 years. But that's the reason he tells him that in our culture, the younger is not given before the elder.
Right.
And so that's why that, according to Jewish tradition, that Leah was supposed to marry Esau and Jacob was supposed to marry Rachel.
Okay.
But here he flips it around because Esau's not coming.
Right.
And so Laban's like, you're not going to have, you're going to have the oldest daughter first. And also, another thing to consider here is that according to some rabbis, we know that all don't agree.
Right.
But according to some, Rachel and Leah were twins.
Ah, okay.
Now, we don't know that for a fact, but I've often wondered, why is it that a man sleeps with the wrong woman and doesn't know it?
Right. Yeah. That kind of stretches it a bit.
Yeah, okay, it may have been dark. Maybe she had a veil over her head. Some people say, but, me and my sister, there would be no way that a man wouldn't know which one he had.
Right.
So there had to be some physical characteristics about them that were alike.
Yeah.
For him
Well,
to...
that would make sense because they were obviously either very, very close in age or twins, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that mistake to happen to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it were true that, as you said, they were twins or very close in birth, it could have been 10 months apart.
Right.
That happens a lot. And looked a whole lot like each other. You could understand Jacob's mistake, and you could understand then that it may not be so much the physical qualities that Jacob saw in one over the other one, but it's the personalities, the way they express themselves, that he liked Rachel's over Leah's.
Yeah, and we were talking about that, how opposites attract, and how Rachel, when you think about where was she at and where was Leah at.
That's right.
Rachel was out there tending to the sheep.
Which means, like David, if a wolf or something came along, or a coyote, I don't know what kind of animals they had over there, came along, if Rachel was tending to the sheep, she was able to kill that animal that was coming after the sheep.
Right.
So she probably had a very tanned body compared to Leah. Leah seems to be like Jacob, who was at home in his mother's tent.
Right. Right. Yes, and so Rachel would have been a very physical person.
Yes.
Like
muscular.
Esau. Yeah, like Esau.
He was an outdoorsman.
Right. And so with that theory, that opposites attract, then obviously Jacob is probably attracted physically to the very first thing that he sees.
That's
and
right.
He's not taking into consideration the inner part of a person, which is what a lot of us do today, in relationships.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I wanted to read something that Messiah Yeshua said in Matthew 6:22 as we continued this discussion. And he said this, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, then the whole body shall be full of light. But if your eye is evil, then the whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness?"
Okay.
So, in Scripture also we read about having a good eye or evil eye. And again, eyes, like Leah's eyes, is talking about an inward quality of not being self-centered in your relationship to others, about caring for the fellow, your fellow man on earth, because you can't be right with God if you're not right this way with fellow man.
Kind-hearted, generous,
compassionate.
Yes, absolutely. And they, like we said, it's quite possible that Leah was much closer to God in that relationship that she had with him, because God blessed her tremendously despite the pain that she was going through. She always called out to him, maybe now my husband will love me. Maybe
in the way that she named her 6 sons.
And it's fascinating to me is that by the time she gets to the later sons, she has practically accepted it, and she is, instead of saying, maybe now Jacob will love me, or maybe this, now she's saying, I'm blessing God because he has given me this child.
Yes, that's right. And God did bless Leah. He blessed both of them. But when you look at Leah and Rachel, which one was buried beside Jacob?
That was Leah.
Leah.
Yeah.
Abraham, Sarah, Jacob, and Leah were buried in the cave of Machpelah, but where was Rachel buried?
She was buried somewhere else.
On the way to Bethlehem, when he
Yeah.
was coming back from Laban's.
Yeah.
And so God honored Leah, to me. on a higher level than he honored Rachel.
Oh, for sure, because when we look at their children, you know, yes, Messiah ben Joseph, the Redeemer,
Yes,
he came through Rachel,
he did.
but his tribe does not have a place in the end of days. It's Ephraim and Manasseh, his sons.
That's right.
You know, so his name is not even there, but yet Leah's lineage brings about kings and priests.
That's right, because Judah, from where Messiah came,
Mhm.
Judah was from Leah,
Right,
and Levi, where the priest came through,
Mhm.
was from Leah.
yes. Judah was born and then Levi was born.
That's right.
Right together like that.
So I don't know. It's just interesting because I know I struggled with that passage as to what the tender eyes meant.
Mhm.
But now it makes perfect sense when
It does.
you think that you understand it's an inward quality.
Yeah, because I'd always read that and thought, well, this is kind of a horrible thing to start talking about how ugly a person is.
I know, it's like, poor lady, she was so ugly, no wonder he didn't want her.
Yeah, exactly. And now we find out that actually she probably was full of more qualities that he was not capable of appreciating.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
yet, who died first?
Yeah,
Rachel did.
yeah.
And so Jacob had to spend the remainder of his life with Leah.
Mm-hmm.
So God honored her.
Sure.
And when I read their stories, I felt really sorry for Rachel. And then, as I began to really study the Bible, I felt more sorry for Leah.
Yeah,
Because Jacob had a choice,
he did.
but he did make the right decision. When he realized that he had gotten the wrong girl,
Mm-hmm.
he could have gone to Laban and said, I don't want her.
Oh, you're right.
You deceived me, and I didn't work 7 years for her, and I don't want her. Hey, you can have her back.
That's true.
But Leah would have been a humbled one.
Mm-hmm.
And that culture, that was,
That would,
that would have been very bad
yeah,
on Leah.
yeah.
What Jacob should have done is just take Leah and leave Rachel alone.
Mhm.
He had a wife.
Yeah.
And so you read in all their struggles with their children and everything, you get to Reuben, he goes out and gets the mandrakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is the one day that I was reading it and it's just like, oh, I feel so sorry for Leah. Because Leah was really the first wife. In
Mhm.
ancient world, they had many wives,
Once-
but it was that
the
first
first wife
wife
that
that was
had
the real wife.
That's
And that
right.
was Leah.
Yeah.
And so Reuben comes with the mandrakes, and Rachel wants them.
Yeah.
And Leah says, "You've taken my husband. Will you now take my son's mandrakes as
Yeah,
well?"
that's
and I'm
right.
like, "Oh, ouch!
Yeah.
That
And that must have hurt a lot.
yeah,
And that's why I was saying, though, that as you can see her faithfulness through the way she names her sons.
Yes.
How she comes to terms with everything. She was in basically a loveless marriage
She
because to the end of her life, because Jacob never loved her like he loved Rachel.
that's right.
But she came to terms with it through her faith in God.
She did." And the other thing is, the two handmaidens, Zilpah and Bilhah,
Mm-hmm.
and when Rachel died, what was it, Bilhah? I can't remember which one was which now, but she ends up dying as well. Rachel's handmaiden. So
Yes.
it's like Jacob's completely cut off
From
from everything.
to do with Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, any other thoughts?
Nope, that's about it.
All right.
Right.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks.